Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using a My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. For this layout, I'm using the March kit, and in the March kit we receive these beautiful papers and embellishments from a Simple Stories collection called Simple Vintage Spring Garden. For this layout, I'm using some diamonds. I punched those out of some white cardstock, and I'm layering 3 diamonds together. And then after I have the 3 cardstock diamonds attached, I'm going to put a piece of pattern paper on top of those, and then I'm going to use those diamonds in my background. I think I might have gone a little bit overboard by attaching 3 different pieces of white cardstock together. I probably should have used 2 and then the pattern paper, because all of these diamonds together on the background were a little bit heavy. But I used a piece of thick 120-pound cardstock for my background, so the background was able to hold these pieces of paper, but if I had used a piece of pattern paper, it definitely would have buckled under the weight of these shapes. So now that I have all of my diamonds put together, I'm inking the edges of all of them with some Distress Oxide in Fired Brick. And I feel like in the past I've underused Fired Brick because I didn't realize it was such a bright reddish pink color, but it was perfect to go along with this collection, and in particular some of the flowers and embellishments that I used on this page. I knew that I wanted to take all of those diamonds and make some kind of a pattern on the background, and I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to arrange those diamonds, so that's what I'm working on right here. Once I figure out how I want to arrange all of the diamonds, I'm going to create a mixed media background. The paper that I'm using here is thick white cardstock. I've already applied a coat of Liquitex gesso to it since I knew I was going to create a mixed media background. And I decided pretty quickly that I wanted to create a strip of these diamonds on the right-hand side of the layout. I had a few extra diamonds left over, so I ended up making another secondary little cluster on the left-hand side, but it's very small. Initially, I was thinking that I might want to put the diamonds in a diagonal going across the page, but then I realized that the shapes were kind of large and I would have to make a lot more of them to make a diagonal, and I kind of liked this composition, so I thought I would go with it. Now I'm using a pencil and I'm putting some light pencil lines behind where I have all of the diamonds. And the pencil lines are going to help me a lot as I add the mixed media to the background. Sometimes I think, oh, I have a general idea of where I'm going to have all of the elements on the page. But then once I remove them from the page, I totally forget exactly where they went. And I just find it so much easier to make these pencil lines. And I try to keep the pencil lines really light because they're a little hard to get rid of once mixed media is added on top of them. I'm using a Tattered Angels Glimmer mist that I had in my stash. It's called Bluebell, and I love this color. It's kind of a really light periwinkle. There's a little bit of purple to the color, but it's also bluish at the same time, so it's a beautiful color, and I thought it went so well with all of the other colors in this collection. And you can see that I'm adding this color generously to the background. I'm not only putting it where I'm going to have the diamonds, but I know that I want to add my photo to the top left side of that strip of shapes. So I'm adding some color there too, so that hopefully you'll be able to see that on the outside edge of where I have the photo. I layered one of the diamonds on top of the background just to make sure that I liked the way that the combination of colors was turning out. Now I'm adding some splatters. I was trying to add them to mainly the areas where I already have the spray on the background, but the splatters pretty much went all over the page, and I was okay with that because these splatters are very small, and the background is kind of plain. It's just a plain white background, and I'm only using one color on it, so I decided to just leave those splatters where they were. And now I'm adding another layer of color. I wanted it to be a little bit brighter than it was. I don't want the background to be too dark. I do want it to be kind of subtle, but I wanted a little bit more color. So I felt that one more layer would enhance the color. You'd be able to see it a little bit better. And I find that in order to make a color a little bit richer or more intense, I have to let the first application dry before adding the second application, otherwise the color won't build on top of each other and it won't get darker. And now I'm adding more splatters to the page. I absolutely love the splatters. And I chose this color because there were a couple of spots in some of the pattern papers that had a similar color to this, so I knew that it was a good combination with all of the other colors. I usually try to pick a color for the background that contrasts with the majority of the embellishments and pattern papers that I plan to layer on top of it. But I do like to look carefully at the pattern papers to pick out the color, because that way I know that everything will coordinate. So now I am sprinkling some droplets of water on top of these large areas of color. This is something that I used to do on every single layout, and I haven't really done it as much lately, but it makes some really nice water droplet marks on the areas of color that I've put on the page. So I think between the multiple layers of color and the splatters and the water droplets, the color, it doesn't look so solid. There's a lot of interesting variation to it. Now I'm going to add some modeling paste, and I think that will give the background even more variation. I mixed a couple of things together. I had a little bit of Finnabair modeling paste in a tube, so I tried to squeeze what I could out of that tube, and then I added some Ranger texture paste to that. In addition, I added some Master's Choice thick body acrylic paint in white. And I mixed it all together, and I'm using a stencil from the kit. I think this is such a pretty stencil. I love these almost mandala-like circles. And I'm going to apply that to the large area of color on the right, and then also to the smaller one that's on the left. And I believe this is a Vicky Bouton stencil, and this was included in the kit. I used my heat gun to dry the first round of modeling paste. That just made it easier so I could go back in with the stencil and not smear what I had already put down. And whenever I'm adding modeling paste to a page, I think about a couple of things. One of them is that I don't want to have a super regular edge. I like to take my palette knife and make it a little bit more irregular. I don't like to have straight lines on the edges of the modeling paste. And I will usually extend the stenciling a little bit past where I have the area of the color and have it overlap the background a little bit. So I was kind of on a kick where I was adding the Ranger texture paste to my modeling paste. And I think that it makes a big difference. It makes the modeling paste a little bit less opaque, a little bit more translucent. It also makes it a little bit shinier. And I think that is a cool effect. I think that the regular modeling paste looks great, and this is another different variation, and I like having those different options. Now I'm using a second stencil. This is a Tim Holtz stencil that I had in my stash, and it looks kind of like splattered paint. I'm adding some of this stenciling mainly around the outside of the areas of color. I thought that these splatters, which are kind of an organic look, would look nice with the geometric circles, kind of a contrast. And I just did a little bit of stenciling using the second stencil. Now I'm adding some splatters of watered down white acrylic paint all over the background. And then I allowed the whole background to dry. Now I'm ready to add my photo and all of the other embellishments to the layout. I started by drawing a light pencil line down the center of where I want to add those diamonds to the layout, and then using that line and also the photo that I took on my camera, I reassembled all those diamonds basically where I had them before. I might have switched up a couple of them, but it's generally the same layout that I had planned earlier. And then once I had placed all of the diamonds down on the background, I began attaching them down using some ATG adhesive. And once I had all of the diamonds in place and attached down, well, except for that one that just fell off, I trimmed off the excess that was overlapping the edge. And now I'm ready to start working on my photo. I have my photo mounted on some white cardstock, and then I wanted to create a second mat for it, so I decided to use some Distress Oxide just around the outside edge of a circle that I cut out using my Creative Memories circle cutters. You could see one off to the left. I don't know if you have those. I feel like so many scrapbookers started out with those tools, and that's one of the best tools that I have in my stash. I still use it all the time. I'm using a dauber here, and once again, I'm using the Distress Oxide in Fired Brick, and I add some color to that second circle. So I guess the photo wasn't actually mounted to the cardstock yet because I am attaching that white mat down to the mat that I just made with the fired brick. And now I'm going to attach my photo on top of those two circles. And the photo that I'm using for this layout is a picture of my daughter Julia. We are in Lancaster, Pennsylvania on a trip that we took many years ago. We went to a farm and the cats there were the friendliest cats I've ever met in my life. They came running over to us, and my daughter Julia was just in her glory. She loves animals. Everyone in our family is just in love with all different kinds of animals. So she picked up the cat, and we took many pictures with a couple of different cats that day. The photo is resting on the diamonds on the right-hand side. So I needed to put something underneath it on the left-hand side so that the photo would sit level on the page. So I'm using some of those pieces of the diamonds that I cut off the edge earlier, and I'm placing them underneath the photo on the left, and that way the photo will be securely attached down to the page and it will be level. As this video progresses, you might notice that some of the diamonds will switch places. I don't think this is the only time that I move them around, but every once in a while I will decide that I want to change the place of some of them just so that I have the different patterns and colors spread out across the page. I knew right away that I wanted to use this title Happy for this layout because I think it fits the mood of my daughter so well. And then I also wanted to include some flowers on the left-hand side of the photo, kind of going around in a curve. The flowers that I'm adding right now were all fussy cut from one of the really pretty pattern papers. I love when there are large scale and even small scale flowers to fussy cut out. And then on top of those flowers, I want to layer just a few of these dimensional flowers. I had a medium-sized pink flower that has a really pretty gold center that I'm using. And then the two smaller flowers have some really pretty jewels in the center, especially that one on the bottom. It has a pearl and some jewels, which I really love. And then I wanted to pop up the title on some foam. So I love to reinforce things that I pop up on foam with some heavy cardstock. So I traced around the outside of the title onto a piece of cardstock, and then I cut that out, and then I attach that down to the back of the title. And now I'll be able to add some foam behind it and know that it won't bend, which often happens when I back things up with foam and I don't reinforce it. I talk about this all the time on my channel, so I apologize if you've heard this before, but I just want to make sure I describe my process to anybody who is watching for the first time. I love this little birdhouse, and I thought it fits so nicely in this little area with the 3 diamonds on one side. And I thought it went really well with the theme of being on a farm and being outdoors. So I definitely wanted to include that on the layout. And I'm adding a little bit of fun foam to the back of the title to pop it up. As I mentioned, I wanted to give it some dimension. So I'm fitting those elements together on the bottom of the page. And I'm also going to be tucking this die cut of flowers into this title cluster. And this was a die cut from the ephemera pack that was in the kit. I add some adhesive to the back of the title, and then I layer that on top of all of those other embellishments. And then I selected a few more embellishments that I thought I might want to use on the layout. I liked this little flower. I thought it would be a good complement to all of the larger flowers that are in that cluster. And then I added this little leaf. I thought that I needed a couple of leaves at the bottom of the flower cluster at the top of the page. And then I always love to add butterflies to my layouts. And the color of these butterflies was just so pretty. I loved the way that they were painted, and I wanted to include all of the pink butterflies that I had on this layout. So I ended up including 4 of them on this layout. I also wanted to include some hearts. I layered a couple of hearts together and placed them underneath the butterflies. Both of those hearts are pink. One of them is a regular sticker and the other one is a chipboard sticker, and I thought that they went well together. And then I used another sticker and piece of chipboard to create a layered heart, which I placed on the left-hand side of the layout. Most of the butterflies that I use on this page are die cuts. The one that's at the top is a chipboard piece, so I didn't use any foam to pop that one up because the chipboard already has some dimension. But I did put some strips of foam on the backs of the wings of the other 3 pink butterflies that are on the page. Then I put some adhesive on the backs of their wings and attached them down to the page. I think bees must be very popular this year. I see a lot of manufacturers are including them with their embellishments. So I added a couple of bees to the layout. There was already one printed on the green checked diamond that's to the right of the photo. So I added 2 more to make my visual triangle. I glued down those dimensional flowers using some gel glue, and now I'm adding some pearls to the layout. These are strips of 3mm pearls. I added a couple of them to the centers of each of the butterflies. I also added 1 pearl to the centers of each of the hearts that are on the layout. And then I thought I would add a little something extra to the photo. I neglected to mention that I put a doily behind the photo, and I decided to put a small pearl in between each of the scallops that are on the doily. And I don't know why I don't use doilies more often. I love using them. I think they're such a nice addition to the page, and I have so many of them because I've been collecting them for years. And I think sometimes I just forget about them, but I want to try to remember to add them to more of my layouts. I added a few more elements to the flower clusters. I added a leaf to the top cluster, and I added a leaf to the bottom cluster too, along with a small pink flower. I also added this sentiment that says a beautiful day below the title. And even though I think you could put that sentiment on many, many layouts, I have very vivid memories of this day, and I really think it was a beautiful day. So I thought that was the perfect little embellishment to include on this page. Then I attached down any of the hearts that weren't already attached down to the layout, and this layout is complete, and I've included a few close-ups. Thank you very much for watching this video. It means so much to me. I also want to say thank you so much if you've left me a comment recently. I'm going to be answering all of the comments very soon. I greatly appreciate all of your kind words. Your sweet comments really encourage me and keep me going. Please don't forget to look in the description box where you'll find the link to the My Creative Scrapbook website where you can purchase a subscription to the limited edition kit or any of the other beautiful kits they have. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.